This is the Schwerer Gustav, also known as Dora, the largest piece of artillery ever used in combat. During World War II, it was utilized to destroy Soviet fortifications. The weapon was so massive that it required 5 dedicated trains to transport it, and more than 4,000 personnel to deploy it. Even preparing a firing position took 6 weeks. The armor-piercing shells made craters large enough to swallow buildings.
Creep leaks. The high explosive rounds could bury themselves tens of meters into the ground before detonating.
We've recreated Dora in detail to show her strength and explain why the gun was not a success for the Germans. The Schwerer Gustav, or Heavy Gustav, was a railway gun engineered by the Krupp Company, led by Gustav Krupp. The weapon's full length, when assembled, was 155 feet, 2 inches long. Roughly the length of 8 M4 Sherman tanks placed end to end. The nominal caliber of the gun was 31.8 inches. The barrel was rifled, and the rifling depth was initially around 0.4 inches. The width of the carriage was 23 feet 4 inches, which meant the gun needed 2 pairs of parallel rail tracks to stand on. With the barrel lowered in the loading position, the gun's height was 38 feet 1 inch.
Almost 4 M4 Shermans stacked on top of each other.
The barrel assembly alone weighed 400 tons, and the total weight of the gun was 1,350 tons.
More than a fully loaded passenger train.
To move the gun, it had to be broken down into roughly 25 main components. Deployment started with constructing 4 parallel railroad tracks. 2 central tracks were for the gun itself, and 2 outer tracks allowed the gantry cranes to lift and place the major components in place. The sleepers under all 4 tracks were closely spaced and reinforced by iron grids to help absorb the massive recoil when the gun fired. First, the left and right chassis halves were assembled on 4 5-axle bogies each. This meant the gun moved on 40 axles, or 80 wheels. Once completed, the central connection and mounting piece were installed between the chassis. Then, the gun cradle was fitted onto the mounting. After that, a jacket tube for barrel support was set into the cradle, ready to accommodate the barrel. Precision is paramount as the colossal piston is guided into the steel casing. Automated systems then secure the flange. 4 recoil cylinders were arranged in 2 pairs around the cradle to help spread the massive recoil force. Finally, the breech block was moved into place and installed. At the rear, a loading platform was integrated into the carriage. It featured 2 hoists to lift shells and charges, a self-contained power unit to drive all the servicing mechanisms, and a central loading tray. The gun was powered by an onboard diesel-electric generator. To slow the 1,350-ton weapon, railcar handbrakes were installed on the 4 ends of the front bogies. Massive jack pads were installed on the carriage. These were lowered before firing to transfer the recoil force directly into the ground. The jack pads also prevented the gun from horizontal movement during firing. The huge gun fired two primary types of shells. The high explosive shell, or Sprenggranate, was the lighter of the two. Including all charges, the complete assembly measured 27 feet, 1 inch long.
Around the length of a classic London double-decker bus.
A ballistic cap made from silumin, an aluminum alloy, was mounted at the nose of the shell. The cap provided better aerodynamics, reduced drag, and allowed the shell to fly further. The cap covered the nose fuse at the upper part of the shell. The explosive charge consisted of pieces of hexogen and nitroguanidine. 3 pairs of driving bands were made from sintered iron and wrapped around the shell. The bands gripped the rifling or spiral grooves inside the barrel, making the shell spin as it accelerated forward.
With the maximum powder charge, the shell reached a muzzle velocity of around 2,700 feet per second,
which gave it a maximum range of roughly 29 miles.
After impact, the shells produced craters about 39 feet wide and 39 feet deep in packed earth.
The armor-piercing shell, or Panzergranate, was heavier and designed for penetration. Almost as much as a P-47D Thunderbolt fighter.
Unlike the explosive shell, it only had a single fuse in the base.
With the maximum powder charge, the shell reached a muzzle velocity of around 2,400 feet per second. Test results showed that the shell could penetrate 33 feet of concrete.
Around 3.3 feet of armor plate, or 23 feet of reinforced concrete.
The gun was designed for long-range siege, not direct fire. Both shells had enough range to shoot across the Strait of Gibraltar. They were fired with a propellant charge of good old smokeless powder. The gun could fire at angles from roughly 45 degrees up to 65 degrees. To aim the gun left or right, there was no turret to rotate. Instead, the entire weapon sat on a curved section of track. 2 diesel-electric locomotives pushed and pulled the gun back and forth along this curve until the barrel pointed at the target. The crew positioned the gun with precision down to about 0.4 inches along the rails. The shell and propellant components were hoisted from ammunition cars on the rear tracks up to the loading platform by 2 lifts. The shell was rolled onto the central loading tray and pushed into the chamber by the powered rammer.
The bagged charges came next, followed by the cartridge case holding the main charge. This sealed the breech and provided the ignition.
Dora's busiest day saw only 16 rounds fired, despite the massive manpower and logistics involved. After inspection of a worn barrel, the original life estimate of around 300 rounds was revised to just